Hello, and welcome to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. This 5th edition D&D adventure, The Heretic, was written and run by your DM, Scott. And now, please enjoy episode 505, titled, I Don't Want to Make a Shopping Trip Scene Out of It. Actual play begins immediately.
Hello everyone, this is Scott, your DM for this 5e adventure, The Heretic. With me tonight, starting on my right, are...
I'm Tom, playing Alder Rusha, a human male cleric of Amira, and a skill-seeking rogue.
Hi, I'm Mike, playing Marduk, a male half-orc fighter, graduate of the Academy, and an Eldritch Knight in the Fist of Amira.
I am Jim, playing Grodor, a hobgoblin warlock and one of the homesick Fists of Amira, searching for truth, knowledge, and our guide to the Hollow Lands.
I'm John, playing Melody, female human cleric, the third of the exemplar family Harmony. I'm a world wanderer and ex-ambassador turned political operative.
I'm Thomas. I'll be playing Gabrielle de Angeles. She's a female Aasimar paladin and a holy fist of Amira whose belief that our goddess is still alive stands shaken due to recent revelations.
Where last we left off, the Fists of Amira were in tense negotiations with the Lady of Ash in the Shadowfell. After what seems to be a very contentious exchange of ideas, Grodor eventually handed over the dice to the Lady of Ash. She took it in her bow, held it for a bit, and then released them back to Grodor, saying that the memory was too painful and that they were better served in the hands of the Fists. After the dice exchange, the Lady of Ash offered, for the mere price of an important memory, one bit of knowledge for each character to take advantage of if they so wished. Gabrielle, Marduk, and Grodor did indeed take her up on the offer, sacrificing a memory for a bit of information that might help them further along. The group was then led by the Shadar Kai through the Shadowfell to a crossing back to the material world and to the gates of their destination, the city of Tarask. They found lodging for the night in a small inn outside the city gates, and that's where we left off. Okay, Gabrielle, as you are getting ready to bed down for the night, you were given a sending by what seems to be some sort of angelic figure. You have a response to that.
Yeah. It takes her a while to craft it. Mind goes all over. She's worried. She's sad. Shaking her worldview a bit. But then, resolute, she sends back this response. How fares John Paul? Who destroyed Amira? What is the plan for revenge, and how can I help from this side? That's all.
Okay, you think those words into existence as you respond. I'm assuming you're not doing it verbally, since you're probably sharing a room with Melody.
Right.
So you go ahead and think those words into existence and send them on their way. As you've had some experience with sending when you were at the Academy, you realize that the spell has now become complete. There was a message to you, and then there was a response, your response back. And at this point, the spell is complete, and there is just silence hanging over your being after you say your words in your mind. You ponder on them for a while, probably have trouble getting comfortable and falling asleep.
Absolutely.
Because of the news that has been shared.
For a while before she's able to reach sleep and all.
Right. And then you have very vivid dreams of battles you fought on your journey to Tarask, training that you've had with mentors and leaders at the Academy, conversations with your uncle in the woodlands on the estate outside of Temerity. Eventually your dreams settle down and you see a whole bunch of letters that are all scrambled and they're moving around. And as you focus on the letters, they unscramble and they form the word Zariel. Then the words scramble back up again very quickly in like a little whirlpool of letters swirl around in your brain, and you focus your attention again, and the phrase, the silver glaive, comes into being.
I don't know anything about it.
And then the letters swirl again, slowly but surely dissipate into blackness, and you hear the familiar voice of the Lady of Ash saying, "And so it is done." You abruptly wake up. It's morning, and you hear the sounds of activity in the inn. You see Melody rolling over as if she's waking up around the same time. And that's the end of the cutscene, as long as you don't have anything else to add.
I don't know how to describe her feeling of frustration. This is great news that she knows now, but like Zariel's, I'm pretty sure, legendary for having betrayed Amira. Right.
Legendary for having betrayed pretty much all the gods. She was a deva that was not Amira specific, but she was in with the gods and certainly was an angelic figure. And then she turned, as far as the stories go, and became something much worse and was turned over to the darkness of evil.
All right. So, yeah, she feels dismal for the rest of the morning until breakfast comes around. Not sure anyone really pays any attention to it, given that we're all feeling kind of, well, a mixture of things, I'm sure.
Right. So we'll pick it up the next morning unless anyone has anything they'd like to do the evening beforehand, before they bed down for the night. Otherwise, we can pick it up in the morning.
Good.
Okay. So you wake the next morning to the sounds of bustling in the kitchen of the inn that you're staying at. People walking down hallways, good-natured laughing and clinking of utensils on plates, and the smell of warm tavern food that just smells absolutely delicious.
I ask Melody, this is kind of your city, isn't it?
I spent a great deal of time here. I was raised here, but I also was raised with you guys. I've traveled, so I have connections here, if that's what you mean.
I was born and raised on the other side of the river, but my mother was stationed here. Don't know if she still is. And I've been here several times.
My point is, do we have a certain location we have to go to, and do either of you know how to get there? And they open the gate at a certain time, don't they?
They do. The gates will be open all day. We can have breakfast here. It's easier to travel through the town than around the edge, and meet at the South Wind Caravanserai. I would like to keep a low profile here. I don't want to announce my presence to my family. It will no doubt slow us down.
As much as you want to keep a low profile, I'd really like to see if I can check with my mom's unit and see if she is here.
I'm okay with that. Your mom isn't the pillar of this town, so it wouldn't be as big a deal.
Well, she wasn't when I left.
Okay.
She's very ambitious, so maybe.
You do you. I don't want my parents to know. That's all.
You go ahead and go down to the large open area where the tavern is and where the food is being served. And for 5 silver piece each, you can all have a wonderful breakfast of sausage links and eggs, muffins, orange juice, milk, mead if you so desire to start your day off that way, coffee. Anything you can possibly imagine. They have it here all for a pittance of a price of 5 silver piece.
The food here smells good. Why wouldn't we want to eat here?
Exactly.
I'm okay with that.
Fortify myself, anyway.
Right. So maybe over breakfast you make your plans for the day. Grodor makes plans to seek out his mother's unit to see if she's still stationed in Tarask or not, or whether she's been moved north. Melody makes her best plans to avoid detection of her family, although her face is very well known in Tarask, and that may prove a challenge, but she'll try her best. Do the rest of you have anything that you wish to accomplish before the potential to head into the Hollowlands, which are renowned for their inhospitable weather? It's an incredibly hot, deserty climb. Most of the area is hard scrabble rock and hard-packed dirt. There is dunes that are there as well. It does become a desert at certain points. It is just probably the most inhospitable part of the country of Amira.
I'll certainly have breakfast and right here, that's fine. I'll bulk up with that. But the other thing that he will be concerned about is provisioning for this next leg, and if he is aware or through his wilderness survival or his memory of how the lands we're about to go into, having supplies of water and rations and stuff to survive the desert is what he'll want to kind of make sure we've got plenty of.
I've been through the Hollowlands and grew up in the area, so I should have a pretty good idea of what kind of animals you need, what kind of food and water you'll need for the trip, what terrain to expect.
Yeah, it'll give you a good idea. You did receive a letter of introduction from the head of Nils Corruptus, your organization that you're working for right now. Riven is his name, the one who's been in contact with you throughout this ordeal. He has a letter of introduction for you to present to your guide, and it should have quite a bit of information as far as outfitting, trading the horses in for more appropriate animals, most likely camels, to pay for the provisions as well. Things along that nature. You do have a letter of introduction to give when you arrive at the caravanserai, as well as a letter of passage into the Orcish Autonomous Region, which is the other name of the Hollowlands. So you have papers that allow you to travel on this area of the country that now is sacred to the orcs, and they consider to be almost a country unto itself.
Sounds like if we want to get provisions, we should study up on that, but also it might be the responsibility of the people that we're dealing with, so we might need to step out and do that. I do want to get some clothes that are appropriate. Like, I don't want to make a shopping trip scene out of it, but Gabrielle's going to do that for a bit while she mulls over the things she's learned.
I'll go over the list that we have with both Marduk and Grodor, but then Grodor's probably going to take off. He said something about wanting to visit his old neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And Marduk and I'll take care of provisions, picking stuff up.
Sounds good. After breakfast, we'll say that Gabrielle steps away for a bit to look at provisions. Gabrielle, if you want to look at the equipment chart in the player's handbook, you can go ahead and look at anything on there, and it will be at price. There's no inflation for the war yet. There's no inflation for the fact that you're in Eastern Amira or towards the border. Tarask is a relatively well-outfitted trading city, and so everything will be at cost if you want to deck yourself out with something specific.
I think she's just going to buy some fancy clothes, which are an actual price thing you can buy. She's just outfitting herself with some stuff to look like she fits in rather than... I mean, we live in a very temperate region. I assume her clothes are either light and airy for summer or really heavy for winter, and this is neither of those are going to be perfectly suitable. Light and airy stuff for temperate summers is not the same as the equipment you need to survive in a desert. And also, correct, she has money to flash around, so she gets somebody to teach her what exactly she'll need. But like I said, I don't really want to interrupt and make a scene of it.
No, if you just look on page 150 of the player's handbook, there is a equipment guide there that you can go to a couple different stores and find what you need. If you want something specific or special, just jump in and let me know, and we'll go ahead and handle that. Otherwise, we'll say you spend the morning. It doesn't take a whole day, just the morning shopping in the city. The city, if you recall, it's called the City of Palisades. There are 5 distinct palisades. An outer palisade of the city, and then incrementally, as you get deeper into the city, other palisades come up, the second palisade, the third, the fourth, the fifth. And within each palisade is usually a part of the city that's distinct. It might be residential. It might be shops and merchants. It might be some military barracks, but there are 5 separate palisades as you go up the hill that Tarask is built onto. So the trading district is the first palisade. So you are within a very close proximity of where you have breakfast in the inn just outside the city gates. And that's where you spend the morning taking care of business.
Melody,
Yeah.
while we were in the wagon at one point, you mentioned that you have something you're delivering here in town. I was assuming I should go with Marduk to get some equipment that we're going to need on the last section of this journey, but is there any assistance you need?
It's conveniently at the same caravansary we're headed to, but
Oh,
it's
nice.
also the box you helped me open and turned out to be a paper drake. It was not alive when I got it, but this kind of complicates the delivery. Tome is a little, it's providing useful for us, and I don't really want to
Okay, here's
let
the
go
thing.
of someone who looks out for me like that. Yeah.
What would happen if you put it back in there and leave relatively quickly? When they open it, is there any chance it's going to fly and catch up with you? Because that's not your fault.
I could ask him to, but
It seems to have bonded with you. I mean,
Is there any problem with just explaining that it's a paper drake and it's now bonded with me and will not leave me, and sorry, it's mine now?
the letter that was to be delivered with it said, we tried everything we could to awaken it, and we could not.
And you did, so it's yours.
That's not how the world works, my friend. I think you know that well enough. They will be, if anything, jealous, and perhaps eager to pay more, but no less eager to have it.
I can maybe fold a paper-looking drake and just put it in the box. They'll never know.
I don't know what my friend looked like before he became what he is now. I'm an expert at running away from my problems.
All right, well, call real loud. I can fly today.
all right. Marduk, Grodor, you guys went over the list. Do you see anything else that we need to add to it? I mean, somebody in Temerity might not have a great idea on things we're going to need out here. I'm sure they have a lot of resources and people, but you guys have been here more often. Is there anything on that list that you think we need to add?
I think we should check with our guy first. He might have some of the supplies already. I don't want to buy something we don't need because he's already got it ready.
You might be right. Did you want to take off, Grodor, and check with your parents, and then we'll take care of this and meet you back here?
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't take long if I could track her down. If she's, it especially won't take long if she's out.
Well, you know where we're going. So if your side trip ends quickly, then you can just join us, but otherwise we'll meet back here. Otherwise, you guys ready to go?
Yep.
Yes.
Let's do this.
Okay. So we'll take Grodor's side trip first, and then we'll do Alder and Marduk, potentially Melody, along for the ride, going to the Southwind Trade Company, where you guys can check on the guide and Melody can decide what she wants to do with her drake. So, Grodor, you are familiar with Tarask. It is like a second home to you, only a day's travel or so from your village where you grew up at in Duldug Keep.
Grodor's mother's name is Tura, and I don't know what position she has in the Soul Guard. I wrote down captain, but I don't know if I'm...
That sounds good.
His father is actually in Duldug still. He is part of the Soul Watch there. Even though they are still together, they are pursuing their careers in separate cities and see each other as often as they can.
Right. You make your way to the entrance to the city, which has been unlocked this morning, and you find a guardsman who tells you that your mother's unit is stationed north of the city right now. So you make your way in the first palisade, which has very wide streets to accommodate all the caravans that travel through the city and is bustling with activity on this early morning. You make your way around to the north side of the city, exit the gate there, and find your mother's unit with a much larger army in general stationed in like the farmland, the grasslands, just outside the city gate. It takes you maybe 20 minutes or so of asking a few people, and eventually you find your mom. She's in a tent having a meeting with other captains and some higher ups. But once she hears that you're there, she tells them that she needs to step away for a moment, and she steps outside the large command tent. And there she is, someone you haven't seen in over a year. She is a hobgoblin through and through. She's muscular, short, her hair tied back in a severe bun to keep it out of her way of the business she needs to take care of during the day. She has her armor on. She has her weapon at her side. But the moment she sees you, her disposition, all that stays the same, but you can tell that her eyes soften a bit. She says, "Son, it is good to see you."
I salute her. It's been too long.
She salutes back.
And then I give her a big hug.
She allows herself to be hugged and gives you a hug back as well. A firm, strong hug. "Son, what brings you to Tarask? Last I heard you were in Temerity training."
Right. Yeah, it's been crazy. We're kind of trying to keep this on the down low, and I look around to make sure there's not enough space between us that we can be seen, and I pull out the symbol of the Fist of Amira and say, "Yeah, I got this. Joined a group of great guys, and we're currently on a mission to the Hollowlands. Going to meet somebody in town here."
When she sees your pendant, a small smile cracks at the corner of her lips.
Yeah, I know. I told you I didn't really want to get into the military, but it found its way. I guess it's a hobgoblin thing.
She smiles and nods. Then you tell her about the Hollowlands, and her eyes immediately turn from one that you think shows pride and happiness with those corners of those mouths kind of facing upwards just a bit, to one of concern. And she says, "I love you, son. I always have. But you look weak. You look like the road is weighed heavy on your shoulders. Are you sure you're okay? Have you been eating?"
Oh, I've been trying to get my strength back ever since an incident that I had, but I'm weak but healthy.
She looks into your eyes with concern about when you mentioned the Hollowlands, and her smile turns into the slightest of frowns. Hobgoblins keeping their emotions in check mostly, so she swings neither high nor low, but somewhere in between. She has a slight frown on her face. Her brow furrows a bit.
I'm like, "Oh, what? You can see by your face that there is something going on between the Hollowlands region and home?"
Well, it is difficult. Some of them want to come and fight on the side of Amira for us, but the prejudices of those in the capital of Temerity are against such an endeavor. I think it's foolishness. I think every sword that we can call to battle right now against the lawgivers we need. But those with more adornments on their military uniforms get to make these decisions, not I. So I know that there is frustration right now in the Orcolans. I know that they are angry and frustrated with us, as they always are. So I preach caution to you, son.
It's all we need is to be fighting up north and then pissing off some of the people we have kind of on our side to the south.
Yes, it's
stupid.
an unenviable position for our country to be in right now. And it's the foolishness of our leaders who take us to that point. She sighs heavily.
Well, you just got to work your way up to the top there, Mom, and take care of this shit.
I am trying. We are heading north tomorrow towards Morn Keep and the battle that rages there to protect our northern border. So I will stand strong against the lawgivers, and I will protect you and the rest of the populace of our country. But for you, my son, You haven't been blessed with prowess with a sword. You have been blessed in other ways. Use your magic. Use it well in the Hollow Lands. Protect yourself and your companions. Just be safe.
Talking about the Hollow-Lands, any word on Una and her crazy infiltration thing that she ran off to do?
No, when she went north to infiltrate the lawgivers, that is the last we have heard. She doesn't have a way to communicate with us, unfortunately, so this is what we're left with, is just conjecture and hope. But I can live with that because I know your sister, and she is strong and she is brave, and if she can strike a blow for our side from within, then she certainly will.
And talking about craziness and foolishness, just not too long ago, kind of made a trade with a powerful being because I've been worried about her since she left, just to know she's okay.
Powerful being.
I was told that she is alive and she is okay. Just heard this yesterday.
Well, thank Amira.
But what I am worried about is what I traded for this information was, it sounds crazy, but I can't picture her face in my head anymore. I had to trade that memory away to get that information. And I am worried that if I ever saw her as someone who has infiltrated the ranks of the lawgivers in a battle, I may hurt or wound her and not even knowing it's her. Because I don't know what she looks like anymore. Is there anything that you can tell me about what she looks like that I would recognize her?
Oh, Grodor, you have made such a momentous decision, Grodor. That is, I can't even imagine being forced to make such a decision. You'll remember her because unlike any hobgoblin you have ever seen before, remember that your sister was born with distinct green eyes, and that is how you will always be able to notice her. Even in the thick of battle, face to face, you would know her and be able to hold your spell or hold your blade and protect her if you came across her.
Green eyes. I don't think I've ever seen. And I'm like, yeah, I haven't just remember seeing anybody with green eyes before.
And you hear from within the tent her name called out, kind of urging her back into the tent. And she, for the slightest second, makes a face of disdain, like she's angry at being called away, but says, son, I need to get back to the meeting. I'm glad that you're well. Protect yourself in the Hollow Lands. It is not a safe place. And
good luck to you, and you stay safe yourself.
I wish you well, my son. And she hugs you again, and then steps into the tent.
I'm going with all due haste to the caravanserai where we're supposed to meet this guy, Altorn.
Okay. That sounds good. Which takes us to Melody and Alder and Marduk. Feel free to interject at any point along my description. You make your way in the main gate, or the main western gate. You find yourself in a mid-sized city that has very wide avenues that caravans are traveling in both directions down. This is definitely a mercantile district. There are shops all over the place. You are inside the first palisade, so you notice that many of the buildings are made of wood. They're either 1, 2, or 3 stories tall. They inevitably have something to do with some type of merchant or business type of activity. Clothiers, hardware, various foodstuffs, both for caravans and for people that would go there to buy their week supply or their day supply for their household. There's not very many residences in the first palisade. And in fact, Melody, you know this obviously from having grown up here. Your residence, which is called Lyrical House, is in the third palisade. And it is unlike many of the other buildings in Tarask. It's a brownstone. It's made of brick, which is very unusual in Tarask. It is very much a wooden city, certainly covered with pitch to prevent it from starting fire, but for the palisades, at least protecting the various sections of the city. But yeah, you're a couple of sections away from your house that your parents live at and you grew up at in Tarask. So you start traveling down the main thoroughfare to the south and to the east. All of you have been in cities throughout your life. Certainly nothing that you haven't seen before.
As we travel through the city, I do have some conversation with Melody, just asking a few things about the city that she can explain because she's been here before. But eventually I also turn to Marduk and say, Marduk, I have a question or two. When we were in the Cinderwald, there was some odd comments that suggested some very weird theories I have about you. Maybe you could explain why some of the comments seem to suggest that you have lived in ancient times before. You were the oldest half-orc I've ever heard of. Or is there something else that would explain that conversation?
Well,
I mean, if you're uncomfortable talking about it.
it's not that I'm uncomfortable. It's that I'm still trying to discover for myself what happened. But this all took place before I joined the academy. I don't know how, but this is my village where I lived no longer exists, and it was hundreds of years ago. And how I came to be here was, I believe, an act of Amira, but I don't know how or why yet, why I was brought to this time and place.
So, GM, how long ago did Amira die or disappear?
To be perfectly honest, we have vacillated, and when I say we, I mean mostly me, has vacillated between a year and 2 years, trying to time it best to your guys' backstories for what made the most sense. So I haven't nailed it down, to be perfectly honest with you.
Could be that there's disagreements. I mean, it's only when you have direct contact with her that you'd have any kind of thing to go off of.
True, but the
Clerical duty,
the Soulspire stuff,
Yeah.
that came out of the ground at a certain point to allow clerics and paladins and others of the divine nature that wanted to stay in touch with Amira's power to do so. So maybe that's the day of demarcation that people say she, quote-unquote, disappeared because the Soul Spire, a base mountain of crystals, erupted from the ground. But let's just narrow it down and say, I don't think it really...
I don't need a specific. I
matters.
just need to know if in my lifetime did I know when Amira did exist. It sounds like the answer is yes.
Yes, just within the last couple of years, a year and a half, year, 2 years, somewhere in there.
Well, Marduk, one question I have for you is, was Amira different
Well,
when you lived? Because...
let me put it this way. The tree that we just talked about, I knew her back when she was a woman. And I had served her.
Well, the reason I ask is I want to know more about how Amira died. What caused Amira to die? Did things exist back then that existed now? Was there the same issue that even back, you said 100 years?
To me, it was a few years ago that I came to the academy.
Right.
But my village and everything is ruins now, and it's, according to the books and everything we learned at the academy, it's been 1,000 years since the places I grew up and knew and walked have existed.
So that is my question. When you did live in a village, and a village did exist, was the world the same? Did the lawgivers exist? Was there a war? Was there Melody's plethora of god-like beings? Or was there only Amira?
Yes, Amira walked on the earth. She led the Lords of Light. I was part of the Shardarkai, and I had sworn my fealty to the Lavender Queen, who is now a tree. And
The one in the Cinderwald.
correct.
Okay.
What you call the Cinderwald is where I grew up and now recalled as the Everwald. The Lavender Queen had done something. I think she had aspired to join Amira as a demigod, and in her efforts to help the Lords of Light oppose the Rune Lords, well, to be honest, I don't know what happened. I was there, but all I saw was a flash of light, and I woke up apparently a millennia later. But looking through the records, and from what I recall, that is when the armies on both sides were incinerated and the Cinderwald was created. I suspect, based on what I learned at the academy, that there was some kind of backfire or unexpected consequence or some spell got horribly out of control and caused a lot of problems. But was it like it is now? No. In some ways it was worse, in some ways it was better, but devils walked the land at the time in the form of the Rune Lords, and maybe that's what we're facing now, because there seems to be kind of the same things happening again. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you more than that. It's tough to remember.
I look over at Melody. We have Gabrielle in this one? Do you feel a little inferior? Because I sure the hell do. Amira actually moved you. You are someone of importance. That much is clear.
Or maybe...
Why else would she move you from then, when you would have died, to now, specifically now?
Well, that's why I cling to my belief in Amira, and I cleave to the light that she provides in the spear.
That I understand way better now, thank you.
Plus, that's also why I aced all our ancient history exams.
I had to study. You got it easy.
Right? I mean, literally, he lived then. I mean, come on.
But I also did horrible at contemporary history, so it's a give and take.
But yeah, you can see that there were fragments of Amira walking the earth even then. All of the thinking species led to the diversity we have now when Amira fragmented herself.
But how does the core of the fragmentation cease to exist?
I don't know that. I don't think it is. I think that she gave up a lot and hung on for a long time. I can see where she might need a break once in a while. We don't know if this hasn't happened before. It's just not recorded.
Well, Marduk, that was quite impressive. Not what I was expecting to hear. Thank you. It was intriguing.
And also, the philosophy of it hurts my head. I mean, when does an egg stop becoming an egg? I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe. Mm-hmm. As I sit there eating this lovely breakfast, there was an egg, and then they cracked it and cooked it, and it ceased to be an egg. Does that mean that it broke into different things? Does that mean it's any less of an egg and now it's different? Or did it go through some transformation? I don't know. But that's about as philosophical as I can get right now.
That is something that Melody enjoys, and perhaps we'll talk about it some other time.
And this is also why I tend to the horses, because these kind of thoughts occupy my day a lot.
I imagine the horses have not changed much in the time that you have changed.
No. And I'm also interested to see what has changed and what stays the same no matter what.
Indeed.
And with this, you arrive at the southern gate. And the southern gate is still on the northern side of the Barren River. So you have not crossed the river. But outside the city gates is not the small village like you had on the eastern side of the city, where you stayed in an inn last night, but you have a absolutely enormous, sprawling caravansary. There's multiple large wooden buildings, livestock everywhere, horses, hundreds of wagons. The air is just filled with dust, shouting of people back and forth, the low murmur of conversation, the call of animals, and the smell. Yeah, the caravansary is got quite the smell. Sweaty animals, sweaty people, manure. It's overwhelming. And this is the Southwind Trading Company. You are quite taken aback by the size of it and the scope of it. It looks like you could get lost in just the enormity of it. What do you guys do?
Well, we have an individual we have to find somewhere in here. Any idea, Melody?
I know where the guy running it is, but there is presumably like one bar.
There is.
That is the main thing?
Yeah, there's an inn with its own bar. There is a bar that is several levels high because of the amount of people who stay here and carouse. Mm-hmm. There is another building which houses the staff. It's almost like a barracks where they sleep and live on site because their jobs are so long and difficult to do. And then you have another large multi-story building that is where the paperwork, the clerks, and the information is stored. you're thinking that the logistics building is probably the building that you would want to go to if you've got yourself an envelope of introduction and know that you need a guide that should be here.
All right. Well, the logistics building will have both the boss I need to make the trade with, more than likely. It's probably where he spends most of his time, and someone who could point us to Blackthorn.
And you know this, Melody. Your guide, Altorn Blackthorn, is the son of the owner of the caravanserai, Rild, R-I-L-D, Blackthorn. Both of them half-orcs.
All right.
Rild has
the Blackthorn we're going to see is not the same as the Blackthorn who runs this place. It's his son.
Correct. The Blackthorn that runs the place has a reputation as being a very powerful figure within Tarask. He's also well known for borderline legality when it comes to running his business. So he's got powerful friends in powerful places. He's also not the most scrupulous individual that you know of, based on reputation. This is reputation, not necessarily who he is, but what word on the street is that you've picked up through the years of living in Tarask. Also a bit of a carouser himself, apparently, and a ruthless businessman. His son, you don't have any background on at all. The first time you heard of his son was when Riven, who sent you on this mission, mentioned his name and handed you an envelope with his name on it.
Okay. Well, I'm looking less forward to this trade featuring our Paper Drake tome now, after suddenly remembering all this. But either way, let's find the son and I can deal with my problems in the future.
Sounds good.
You know, I'll help you if I can.
Indeed. Thank you.
How are you going about finding Althorn?
There's got to be someone that, I mean, you can't just walk in and talk to the owner, right? There's got to be someone who schedules things.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to find a secretary who can get me an itinerary of where folk are at.
There are, like, stable hands everywhere. They wear a certain outfit. It's brown, like the dirt that they spend most of their day in, and they have a certain emblem on it that has the name and the logo of the Southwind Trading Company. You could probably see 2 dozen workers harrying from caravan to stockrooms to feed areas for the animals to stockades where animals are kept in pens.
Sure.
It just
one of them can get us a pointer to a secretary who will know more about schedules.
Yeah, you find one and he points you to the logistics building and says, you're going to have to go to logistics and you're going to have to wait in line. But that's the best I can tell you. That's where you need to go if you're trying to find Althorn. I know he does do guided tours. He's back. I've seen him. But you're going to need to go to the front desk and inquire.
We make our way towards the logistics building.
You get there and there is a crowd in the common room on the ground floor. There is a large desk against the far wall, but there is a snaking line of individuals. There is the smell, because this is in the south, so it's pretty hot, of sweat and lots of different colognes that you've never smelled before from different countries. People talking after being on the road for weeks on end, so lots of bad breath. It's a very uncomfortable room to be in. There's no way to make it less uncomfortable in the sense of it's hot and the line is long and it's just kind of miserable.
I figure I can meet the boss quickly if I start talking about his illegal operations.
There are a couple of workers in the uniform that you saw previously standing and keeping people in line and not cutting and not being overly rude to each other and starting fist fights as they're waiting for their turn. So that's all that you can really see at the back end of the line when you first enter into this large room. You've been in line before, Melody.
Oh, yeah.
In your line of profession. It looks like about an hour wait in this line.
Mm-hmm. I'm not going to do that. So. I walk past folk holding the badge high, saying, official business, just got to talk to someone behind the counter.
You get stopped by one of the helpers that work there. Like, hey, no, you're not allowed that. Hey, no.
Yeah, I am. Look at this.
Go ahead and make a persuasion check, please.
Let's make sure I don't have advantage on.
She didn't need it.
I have got a 24 on persuasion.
The young man's eyes go wide. Unlike many of the people working here, he has a dagger on his belt. So perhaps he's starry-eyed at maybe some of his heroes that he's heard about in times past. But
Or shitting himself that he'll be the one the messenger killed.
Right. But he says, "Oh, right this way, madam, and your companions." And he actually leads you away from the front desk into a side room that is currently unoccupied, but it has a desk and it has what looks to be a scribe sitting behind the desk. Half-elf, middle-aged, dowdy clothing, plain-looking overall, but wearing the same uniform that everyone else is wearing, with maybe a couple different accoutrements added to it to kind of say that her station's a little bit different than just a regular hand that's helping out. Mm-hmm. That her scribe status has something a little bit more. So there's a sash or something involved that gives her a higher station. And she looks up and says, "Yes, may I help you?"
I'm currently bushwhacking my way through red tape. I need to I just slap the badge of office down on the table and say I'm currently cutting through red tape trying to get a hold of the Blackthorn son.
Altorn. Oh, yes. I saw him earlier today. And what is this in reference to?
We have business with him leading us down south. We're here a few days early, but he doesn't know when we were going to arrive anyway, just a general time frame. He needs to know that we're in town, and I'd like to have personal words with him.
Right. Jessup, please go ahead and fetch Altorn for us. Is here comfortable enough for you? Can you wait here while we get him for you and bring him for a conversation with you?
I can't look at a line and tell how long it's going to wait. Would it be quicker if I just traveled with you folk?
I don't know if the part of the caravansary that he's currently in is available even to someone of your station.
Wants to be seen by a fist. All right.
But he should be able to track him down quite quickly.
Okay.
And with that, Jessup runs out of the room and disappears out the door of the building and into the main yard of the caravansary. About 20 minutes of uncomfortable looks and boring conversation just to pass the time.
Half intended threats of if he's somewhere that he can't get away from, we just find it and know all about what's going on.
Yeah, patience, please. He'll be right back. And sure enough, the young boy, Jessup, returns to the room with a large, armored, wearing full weaponry on him, a half-orc. He's handsome for a half-orc. He is probably around 6 foot tall or so, has deep brown eyes, 2 tusks that come up over his lower lip, a 5 o'clock shadow maybe going into 8 or 9 o'clock, well-kept black hair, and he comes into the room, looks around a bit, surveys the room, says, "Who was looking for me?"
Pick up the badge and kind of waggle it. You've been hired to lead us out into the HoloLands, a journey of national security.
Before we get too detailed, Altorn, do we need to ask, and I look over at the lady whose office we're in, certain people to leave?
Yes, that's probably a good idea. Janice, please, give us some privacy. Jessup, you as well. And they abscond from the room, somewhat crestfallen, at least as far as Jessup goes. He was hoping he'd get to hear some good details. Altorn shows you the chairs, waves down to them because you're standing right now in case you wanted to sit. And he goes and sits behind the desk and puts his big, heavy-booted feet up on the desk and crosses them and says, "You're early. I got a sending from your boss saying you would be here 2 days from now. But it appears
you also told us to make haste. Did we catch you in the middle of preparing for a different venture, or?
No, not at all. Not a different venture, just not prepared for this venture in particular. Because I thought you'd be here 2 days from now, and he did not tell me you were moving more quickly, obviously, than you did. So my apologies for not having the caravan ready for you. But if you give me until, probably the end of the day, I can put something together to get us ready to be on the road. Does that work for you?
I share a meaningful look that is just what do you think? but also want to intimidate him a little bit.
Well,
He doesn't look intimidatable to you.
I recognize
he looks
that,
like
but
yeah, you've seen it before, but sometimes people are different, so you don't know
I
until you
just
try.
want him to have a level of respect for we got shit to do.
yeah, see, the point that I wanted to do is I tell him, I know you were told we would be here a few days later, but we're good at our job. And I'm hoping you are as well.
I am.
So we have to wait till tonight?
Well, the camels will need to be fed, will need to be watered, the provisions will need to be gathered. There's a lot to do before we head off into the Hollowlands. You do not, I'm good at my job, and you do not head into the Hollowlands, first of all, during the day, during the sweltering heat. Second of all, you don't head in there unprepared. It is brutal. It is exhausting. People have died because they haven't listened to me. So I respect that you're good at your job. You look like you're good at your job. For Amira's sake, you're Fist of Amira. You have to be good at your job. At least I assume you are. Have faith in me. I'm good at my job. I will get you where you need to go.
I do have faith in you. And this is the list of what we were given that we should take on this journey. Tell me what's wrong with it, what we need to add, what you need to add.
He opens up the envelope that was prepared by the scribes of Nil Corruptus, looks it over knowingly, nods a few times, shakes his head once or twice. It looks like we're going to be in the Hollowlands 2 full days before we meet your contact. The water provisions that they're asking for are light. You do not want to run out of water in the Hollowlands. It's a death sentence. So I'm going to make a few tweaks to this list. But overall, it was fairly well prepared. Whoever is in charge of what you're doing is fairly knowledgeable of the dangers of the Hollowlands, but not completely knowledgeable. I'll make a few changes. Trust me, I'll be ready to go tonight.
Is Marduk able to do an insight check to see if he's, I don't know, I'm sensing some bluffing or some, I don't know, I'm a little suspicious for this guy for some reason. I don't know if it's because he's a better looking orc than I am, I don't know. But
Swagger to him, I wouldn't trust it.
Yeah, there's something going on here. I feel like we arrived early and may have tumbled to something. So I was just wanting to see if there's some type of insight. Do I detect like a bluff or
Go ahead and make an insight check. Yeah,
Okay,
that's a good question. Go ahead.
Okay. Marduk rolled an 11.
Okay. With your 11, you don't detect any false bravado or covering of anything. What you do detect is he's making perfectly legitimate and good eye contact with Melody and with Alder. He has barely glanced at you since he came into the room. He, for whatever reason, seems to be talking to the other two, and you get an occasional quick glance and a nod like, are you following? And that's the extent of it. You're not getting anything more than that. Everyone make an insight check that's there, just to get a general feel for him. How's that?
Sure.
Alder rolled a natural 20.
Well done.
If we're a total of?
22.
Nice.
Melody got a 12, so.
Okay. Melody, you're noticing that he's making a lot of eye contact with you as well.
From my perspective, is there some amount of recognition of my family line?
No, you're not getting any special attention from him, you don't think? He just seems to be talking to you and Alder.
All right.
It's just the way it seems. And Alder, the other two don't know this yet until you confer it to them, but he doesn't seem to like Marduk. It's not just not talking to him. You catch microaggressions when he looks away, like he looks at Marduk real quick and like nods at him like he's following, and then he looks back and you could almost detect like in his eyes like there's like a cloud of just
bit of an eye roll,
disdain for him. It's unusual, but you're not catching anything like he's not hiding anything that you can tell, that you can put your finger on. He seems to be a confident guide who has gotten off on a relatively good foot with you and Melody, but for whatever reason, just not feeling it with Marduk.
Okay. It's not something I'm going to bring up in this room with them right now, but it will be discussed with them later, and I have a plan on how to maybe change that during our journey.
Okay. That sounds great. So he left it where he said, and I'll have everything ready to go for you guys tonight. Is that okay?
And just to spin it a little bit, I turn to Marduk and say, you think we can get by the way, he's been in charge of our entire journey, which is why we got here 2 days early. Marduk, you think we'll be able to be ready by tonight, right?
It should be a simple matter.
Indeed. So maybe we can help you since it's going to take you longer to get ready.
I have stable hands and people that can help me get the camels ready. I really think if I'm left to my own devices, I can do it probably as quickly as possible.
I'm sure you can.
Do you need assistance, young man?
None at all. Let's say sunset back here. What you could do to help is you could bring your horses in because they are being traded for the camels. You can bring your cart in because we're not taking a cart into the Hollowlands. We'll be taking saddlebags on the camels, and that's about it. So if you have anything large, you might want to store it. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and we're going to leave tonight, cross the river, travel throughout the night into the Hollowlands, and then break in the morning.
All right. We'll be back. We have some things to take care of.
And about this time, Grodor and Gabrielle, you see them in different places. They haven't noticed each other yet, but they're wandering around the caravanserai, kind of looking to see where they should go. And as you guys come walking out of the large building that held the logistics for the Southwind Trading Company.
When we all meet up, I look over at Marduk and say, this Altorn individual, I don't know if it's just half orcs, any orcs, or just you in particular, but that gentleman has a bit of a problem.
He's a half orc.
I know that. That doesn't mean he likes them. Maybe he likes his human aspect. I'm not sure. But he definitely had a problem with Marduk.
If you say so, I didn't sense anything, but then again, I don't see him as a threat.
No, I don't think he was a threat. He was just being disrespectful.
Okay.
He has no idea how important you are.
If he wishes to challenge me, he knows what he has to do.
Well, I'm sure it'll be an interesting journey.
All right, I'll go tend to the horses and turn in our gear. Anybody who left anything in the wagon, make sure it's out of there before we turn it in.
Let's make sure they know that we're probably going to use that wagon and those horses on our journey back. They're not disposable.
There's probably some things I'm going to arrange left at my parents'.
Right. That's what I was trying to hint at without saying out loud here.
No, I appreciate it. I don't want to talk to them, but that doesn't mean I can't arrange something delivered. If
we gotta
all
go back.
That could be the whole next adventure, Jim.
Yeah, I was thinking that when we come back to the story, I can have a confrontation with my parents.
No, he meant going back the journey backwards.
Yeah, the whole journey back to Temerity is a whole other adventure.
Can't we just check in with one of those things and just stay out here?
You might like it. This isn't my type of neighborhood. I'd much rather go back to Temerity.
It's a dry heat.
It's a dry heat. It clears the sinuses. It's going to feel great.
The war effort will need us elsewhere, I'm sure.
Alas, let's head back. Let's pack things up. Let's get going.
We're going to call it there for the night as you send things to your parents, Melody. You could make a list and send it my way so I know what you no longer are carrying with you. The rest of you go back to the inn. You discharge your cart and your horses and bring it through the city back to the Southwind Trading Company. You probably grab a late lunch after you trade in your animals. The workers help transfer some of your goods from the cart into the saddlebags of the awaiting camels. The sun is just going down in the western sky when you make your way towards the stables to meet up with Altorn and embark upon your journey into the Hollowlands.
Anyone want to nominate their friends for inspiration?
Alder rolled a natural 20 on an insight check. Natural 20s always deserve inspiration, so I give inspiration there. And I also think that Melody played her cards right with cutting to the front of the line and kind of taking charge of the situation. So I want to give an inspiration for that. Everyone else had good role-playing throughout the night, but I think that were the two that kind of shined out the most to me.
Marduk for his revelations on his past and Grodor for...
Yeah, both those are solid. Both of those are solid for inspiration points.
Role-playing moments.
Thank you guys for listening tonight. We appreciate all of our listeners. Hope you enjoyed this role-playing heavy episode. I want to say thank you to the players as well for putting in the effort tonight to get the story moving along. And we'll see everyone again next week. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Knights of the Night Actual Play Podcast. If you'd like to send us a question, comment, or feedback, you can reach us in a number of ways, including Twitter at KOTN_podcast or by emailing us at feedback@KOTNpodcast.com. And don't forget the iTunes reviews. We also have a Facebook page which can be found at facebook.com/KOTN.podcast. While on Facebook, you can join like-minded folks at our fan page at facebook.com/groups/KOTN-fan. And lastly, there's our blog at KOTNpodcast.com, where there's an Amazon link on the right-hand side. For those of you who'd like a more steady way to help us pay the bills, or if you live outside the U.S., you can help by donating to our Patreon page at patreon.com/KOTN. And please remember to join us next week for more mystery and adventure.
So now we can podcast.
Sure. What is going to be our 500 episode? Is it going to be this story, or is it going to be Dresden?
No, it's going to be this story because we're on 498 is the next
Holy
release.
crud.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to sing the whole episode.
So not going to happen.
Show tunes.
Right. It's more free flow. It's not as...
Yeah, it is.
We're not trying to paint pictures and be in character and what would our character do in this exact moment kind of thing. It's more just us sitting around BSing.
Don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I think it's basically that you're just asked what you feel. What do you think? What do you know? What do you want to discuss? So you get to choose what you say. Where when you're role playing, you're giving a certain setting, and now you have to, how do you respond to this is different because
in
you're
character.
Not, right. It's a little more difficult than people tend to a lot more often because they have to take a moment to think about,
right.
Well, how will I respond to that?
I mean, how many years is that? How many years has it been?
We're definitely doing 11.
11.
If not more. We might be.
So we would be in our late 60s, you and I, Tom.
If we did this again.
If we did it for 11 more, if we got to 1,000.
We'll be streaming from the old folks' homes.
We'll be, yeah, exactly. We'll still be doing it, though. I don't know. I never see myself stopping. I see myself enjoying
We're doing our 1,000th episode.
We'll have geriatric adventurers going around. They're all going to be in their 60s and 70s fighting mice or something.
I'm going to teach Arlo how to edit.
Okay,
I haven't checked recently on how close we are to 1 million downloads, but we're in the neighborhood.
And a car drove by my window.
Jim gave you a hug.
It's one of those nights again where I always enjoy the nights, but I had a whole visit to Lyrical House, Melody's home.
I'm sorry, you should have asked me.
No, I didn't know because I don't want to influence it. I want to make you guys do what you want. I want you guys to do what you want to do and drive the story how you want to drive the story. Mm-hmm. So I had this whole thing with your father's name is Cord and your mother's name is Arya. And I had a whole scene with them and what happens, and it was fair. Priceless, but it'll have to be another day.
Yeah, sit on it because we're going to have a confrontation at some point.
Right.
Waiting for now. I want to try to, just for you as a heads up, try to have this paper drake conversation with Blackthorn Sr.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you're going to ignore him.
As we're leaving, and if it goes bad, I just skip town for the adventure and catch up with folk.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be. I wasn't sure if you were just going to skip town totally and not deliver the package, or whether you're going to it.
Sam, the situation's changed. It just sounds like this is a guy, when he hears the situation's changed, goes, and crossbows are armed.
Yeah.
So I am gonna, try to play it cool, but if I have to run away, I'm gonna do that.
Can I give you a quick rundown, Mike?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Back in your time, the Rune Lords had just entered into the world and were causing war. They settled in the Lawgivers area up north that you're fighting a war with now. So the Lawgivers embraced the Rune Lords. They were led by the great devil Asmodeus, and they brought hell to the lands, basically. They just caused ruin everywhere they went. They caused wars. The armies of the Lawgivers came down into Amira, came down towards the Everwold, where you lived. And that night, the night of Cold Fire, when part of Everwald became the Cinderwald, it was the two armies were on either side. The armies led by Amira. Amira walked on the earth in a time that you lived, and she led the Lords of Light against the Rune Lords. But in between those two forces was the Shadar Kai and your queen. And she tried to do something that night, the night of Cold Fire, which you take to think now backfired extensively and caused the Cinderwall to come into being and caused great portions of the armies on both sides to be incinerated. And that's all you remember because, well, you don't remember that. You remember that from the history books. But the night that was supposed to happen is the night you came into the world as it is today. Okay? Sorry, it's a lot of information dumped. I wanted to get you caught up.
Right.
Or was he moved by the Lavender Lady, even though I'm not there to say that?
You're not there, Grodor.
Right.
That's fine.
Plus, he's got that little skull emblem on his jacket.
He doesn't have that. Actually. That's his armor. I couldn't find someone with like leather armor. It looks
Are
like
we
he has
the
metal
baddies?
armor on.
Yeah, the skull thing. Yeah, the Nazi thing. Other possible titles for this episode available for voting at the Facebook fan page were It's a Dry Heat, The Foolishness of Our Leaders, It's a Hobgoblin Thing, I Aced All Our History Exams, The Oldest Half-Orc Ever, You Do You, and Devils Walk the Lands.